All right, everyone. So today I wanted to share with you guys a list of major mistakes that can potentially ruin your account in Raid Shadow Legends. Now, very important thing to distinguish at the start is I consider there to be a big difference between potentially ruining your account and then something that is more or less just going to be a setback. Now, a setback is something that you might have to use resources or time as an investment to recover from, but it is going to be recoverable. So an example of this is there is a progress mission to fuse Relic Keeper. And when I started back in April, one of the really big mistakes that a lot of people were making is they were fusing Relic Keeper before actually getting to that point of the progress missions. And unfortunately, what that meant is if you fused Relic Keeper before you got to that point in the progress missions, you actually had to go back and fuse it again in order to get past that point in the missions. So this means that you had to get all these champions again, you had to level them back up, you had to rank them up, and get all their Ascension materials again. Now, this is recoverable, though. It's not like it's going to ruin your account because you can still go back and get all these champions again. You could still fuse it, get past that point in the progress missions. It's just a waste of resources and whatnot. But these mistakes that I want to talk about are going to be quite a bit more difficult to end up recovering from, and they're definitely things you're going to want to be on the eye out because they can potentially ruin your account. Now, let's start off with number one, and this is going to be probably without a doubt the biggest mistake that anybody, whether you're a new player, intermediate player, or advanced player, one of the biggest mistakes you can end up making in Raid Shadow Legends that can absolutely butcher your account, and that is using important champions as food. Now, I'm not just talking about legendaries. I would say pretty much anybody playing, you never want to use legendary champions as food or rank up material. I would say most players, unless you're an absolute endgame player, you probably don't even want to use epic champions as food or rank up material. But even rare champions, especially to those of you guys who are newer, there are plenty of absolutely fantastic rare champions that are going to be just as good as epics and even certain legendaries that you want to be on the eye out for. Keep a lookout because they are not going to be champions that you want to use as food. Now, just a couple of champions as examples. Of course, you have the starter champions. All of them are actually going to be very good in comparison to the average rare champion. So you have Kale, Gaelic, Eline, and Athel. You also have champions like Apothecary, another fantastic rare that is just going to be super good. Definitely one of the best champions, especially considering that Apothecary is a rare. And I know I have plenty of other videos on the channel where I get into more detail into that discussion, but definitely something you do not want to make the mistake of because you never know. Even with rare champions, it could be a long time before you see another copy of that champion again. With how rare and how many champions there are, especially if you use mystery shards and you don't have a bunch of ancient shards, the chance of getting rares is pretty low, just a little over 1%. So this is why having a decent amount of champion storage is going to be really, really useful, is because the more storage space you have, the less you have to worry about making a mistake like this. But those of you who are newer, I would say without a doubt, never use legendaries as food or rank up materials. And I would even say, for the most part, probably most people watching this video, you don't want to use epics as a rank up or food material as well. So that mistake is probably going to be the biggest downfall or the biggest potential downfall of your account in Raid Shadow Legends. Now moving on to number 2 on the list, and that is going to be another really big one and a really easy mistake to make as a newer player, and that is selling good artifacts. And surprisingly, the game actually tosses some pretty decent artifacts at you when you are newer, just as kind of some of those newbie rewards to kind of get you hooked on the game. But it's very easy as a newer player to not really know how stats work, what stats are good, what artifacts are good. And this is something I'm not going to be able to really get into too much detail in this video in particular. I know I have plenty of videos on the channel getting into the details behind what makes artifacts good versus bad, what ones are worth selling, what ones are worth keeping, and more videos about artifacts will of course be coming out in the future. But just be careful when it comes to selling artifacts, because once you sell them, you're not going to be able to get them back. Now, the good news is we have a decent amount of artifact storage, and this is something, unlike champion storage, you don't actually have to pay in order to get more of. Everyone should just right off the bat have 700 artifact storage spots and then 700 for jewelry as well. As a newer player, you're probably not going to have to worry about getting to this limit, but as a more intermediate or advanced player, once you end up getting close to that limit, you have to either work on gearing out a bunch of champions, or you have to work on selling off some of that gear. So just be mindful of this. Know that when you do sell artifacts, you're not going to be able to get them back, and especially if you are newer, it's definitely going to be worth taking the time to learn what makes artifacts good versus bad, so you don't end up making this mistake, selling some gear that might be one of a kind, and you might play Raid Shadow Legends for many months or even years and not get artifacts as good as some of the ones that you accidentally sold before in the past. So another really big one along the lines of champions, definitely a mistake that has the potential to ruin your account, especially if you sold an insanely good one-of-a-kind artifact. Next up on the list is going to end up being selecting Bad Masteries, and I put here in parentheses multiple times because each champion does have one mastery reset for free. However, if you want to reset your masteries beyond that point, it's going to cost 150 gems. Now, if you spend money on the game, it's not really as big of a deal, but if you don't spend much or any money on Raid Shadow Legends, spending 150 gems simply to reset your masteries, which is a mistake that you could avoid altogether, really not a road that you're going to want to end up going down. Now, I put this in this category because it's just one of those things where a little bit of knowledge is going to prevent you from wasting gems on doing this. So definitely take a look, especially when you get to that point of running Minotaur, or whether you decide to get the scrolls through the new 800 gems to upgrade. When you do get to this point, do a little bit of research for your champions, kind of take a look and see what masteries are going to be good, what masteries are going to be bad, and don't end up making the mistake. I know this is one that I made multiple times, especially with some of my more frequently used champions, and reset your masteries multiple times, because after a point, it is going to end up costing gems. So that's going to be one. I know it might not seem like a big deal as well, 150 gems, but if you end up doing this on all of your champions, and you know you have 10, 15, 20 or more champions now that you realize that you don't really have the best masteries on, that 150 gems on each one of those champions, it can add up to be quite a bit. So you can see how over the long term and over multiple champions, this one can end up being a major problem. Now moving on to the next one on the list, and this is going to be primarily for spenders. Of course, if you're free to play, this one won't apply to you at all, but even if you are a light spender, as a newer player, your first purchase is going to be very important, and this can ruin your account when it comes to trying to get a really good deal, because Plarium really likes to try to get you hooked when it comes to purchases, and they will keep tempting you and making you want to make a purchase, and they'll make your offers better and better up until that very point that you make your first purchase. And once you do end up making your first purchase, then every offer that you end up seeing afterwards is not going to be nearly as good. So it's important for a newer player, if you haven't made a purchase yet, to really be on the lookout for something that catches your eye and not purchase something not so great, because then you'll ruin that opportunity of getting the best deal that you can while it's available to you. Same thing with the wildcard packs as well. Once you end up getting to level 60, you're not going to be seeing those anymore, and those offers are going to be very good in comparison to a lot of the other stuff that pops up. Not a big deal for those of you guys who don't spend a lot of money or any money at all, of course, but if you're really looking to optimize your resources and get the most value for the money that you do spend, that's definitely going to be something that you're going to want to keep an eye on. So that's going to end up being number 4 on the list. Now moving on to number 5. This is a really, really big one, and something that I don't think I've really covered too much in many of my other videos, and this is absolutely going to have the potential to ruin your account. And just like a lot of other similar games to Raid Shadow Legends, the game is going to offer you not only with the temptation to make a purchase, but you're also going to get a ton of either free stuff early on. Of course, you have all your daily login rewards and all that stuff, but just the amount of stuff that you end up getting in the early parts of the game before you really get to the mid and the late game, before you get to account level 60, you're going to get so much stuff. You have all of your campaign rewards, tons and tons of stuff here. You have your faction wars rewards. You just get so much stuff early on, and definitely don't get used to it, first of all. But second of all, you want to make sure that before you blow through all of those goodies that you end up getting early on, think a little bit before you use it all, especially things like the experience boosts, because some of these things you can actually hold off on picking up for a while and really get more efficiency out of it. I know experience boost is going to be one of them. There's a lot of experience boosts that you end up getting like right here in the campaign windows, and there's no time limit to these. You can end up picking these up whenever you want. So maybe think it through and think, well, maybe I should save that experience boost until an event is running, or save it until I have a lot of energy to really get the most out of that experience boost as I can. Another one is going to be like shards, right? You're going to get a lot of ancient shards, void shards, and even sacred shards early on in the game. It's going to be super tempted to just summon them all right away to get a whole bunch of champions, especially if you're newer and you don't have a lot of champions. But think, you know, maybe it might be better, especially if you don't spend a lot of money, to wait until we have some events going on. Try to wait, of course. I always advocate for a double rates event where you're going to have double the chances of getting epics and legendaries. That's going to be without a doubt the best way to use your shards. But if you're not patient enough for one of those, at least try to wait for something so that you're not just getting the bare minimum for all that free stuff that you get early on. So gonna be a really, really big one to those of you guys who are newer. All right, next up on the list, number 6. This is probably going to be the most obvious one to those of you guys who have been playing for a while, and this is actually one of the things in Raid Shadow Legends that we do not have an option to reset, and the developers have confirmed that they don't have any plans in the future to allow you to reset your Great Hall. This means that it's going to be very important for you guys to really think this through and plan out your Great Hall, because once you end up spending your arena medals on it, you're not going to be able to take them back. Now, there's certain things that you're going to have to end up getting for the progress missions and the challenges. That's why my Great Hall looks a little bit strange. Void HP was the first one that I got to level 10, which you will end up needing for a progress mission, and the reason is because I have one of my first really good legendaries was Sir Nicholas, which is a void, and he's HP based. You're going to need to get certain stuff to level 6 as well. Accuracy is always a really, really good choice in the Great Hall, but just think this through. No matter how you do it, you don't have to follow the same strategy that I used. I know I like to keep mine all even, which I would honestly probably not recommend depending on the champions that you have. But no matter what strategy you use for the Great Hall, think it through a little bit and realize that we don't have an option to reset it, and we won't have an option to reset it in the future. So whenever you do purchase an upgrade, it is going to be permanent. So that's going to end up being the last thing on the list. So I threw a few different things at you guys in the video today, and I'm going to end up leaving it here. So I really hope, especially those of you guys who are newer, maybe more intermediate, you guys learn from this video, and hopefully in the future you'll be able to avoid these mistakes that will really get you in trouble in Raid Shadow Legends. So with that all being said, if you guys did enjoy this video and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for all the support, everyone. Really do appreciate it. Feel free to toss a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine. And more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, and all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen right about now. So feel free to check them out. Over 100 raid videos on the channel. More coming every day. Keep an eye out if you're interested in more info and guides about Raid Shadow Legends. And with that all being said, that's going to be it for today. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. And until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.